Let's just jump right in with a question that gets to the absolute heart of one of the most difficult issues we face. It's a question that's really about all of us. So, are we? Are you? Am I? Is it a conscious choice, or is it something deeper, something we just fall into? Well, the answer, as you might guess, is way more complex than a simple yes or no. It digs into our history, our biology, and yeah, even our most primal animal instincts. So to even begin to unpack that question, we first need to get on the same page. What are we actually talking about when we say the word racism? What does it really mean? Now, there are a million definitions out there, but this one, from the Prophet Muhammad, is one of the most practical and powerful I've ever come across. It completely shifts the focus from who you are to what you do. It's not about your identity, it's about your actions when your group is in the wrong. And this is the absolute key. Look, there's nothing wrong with loving your people, with being loyal to your group. That's totally natural. It's healthy. The problem, the exact point where it crosses the line into racism, is when your group commits an injustice and you actively help them. Or maybe just as bad, you stay silent and let it happen. This gives us a really clear way to separate two ideas that people get tangled up all the time. Nationalism, in its purest sense, can just be about loving your culture, your people, your heritage. That's fine. But racism? That's when you support that nation or that group even when they are doing something unjust. See the difference? One is about pride. The other is about being an accomplice to harm. Okay, but here's where it gets really wild. The entire idea of race, the very foundation this whole thing is built on, it might not even be real. Not in the way we think anyway. Let's take a look at the actual science. Now, I know that sounds like a huge statement, but scientifically, it's a fact. Think about it like dog breeds. A golden retriever and a German shepherd have clear, distinct genetic markers. You can test for it. With humans, we just don't have that. The concept of race has absolutely no legitimate biological basis. We are one species, plain and simple. And the proof for this is, well, it's just overwhelming. Decades of research, including the massive Human Genome Project, confirmed it. There is often more genetic difference between two people from the same so-called racial group than between people from different ones. There's no Turkish gene. There's no Chinese gene. These are social labels we made up, not biological realities. Just to put this into perspective, get your head around this number. If you took just 1,000 people from any single place on Earth, doesn't matter where, and you put them on a new planet, in about 50,000 years, their descendants would regenerate the entire spectrum of human physical diversity. Everything we see today. That incredible potential is already inside every single group of us. So you're probably thinking, okay, but what about all the physical differences we can see? Skin color, hair, even things like athletic ability. These are just adaptations to local geography. That's it. For example, some populations in Africa evolved in climates that favored incredible long-distance running. That's not a sign of some kind of racial superiority. It's just a specific, brilliant adaptation to a specific environment. All right, so if race isn't a biological thing, then where on earth does this incredibly powerful us versus them instinct come from? For that, we have to look a little deeper, into our shared evolutionary past with our closest animal relatives. It's called xenophobia, the fear of the stranger, the one who is different. And this isn't some high-level rational thought. It's an ancient animal instinct. Let's just call it the chimpanzee reflex. Because in chimpanzee communities, if another chimp shows up that looks or acts different, it is often met with extreme hostility. And, from a basic survival standpoint, this kind of makes sense, right? Our animal brain is wired for safety, and for millions of years, familiar meant safe. So anything that breaks that pattern, a different language, different clothes, different ideas, that primal part of our brain can instantly register it as a potential threat. And here's the really scary part. Entire societies can fall back into this animal state. When people feel like their very survival is on the line, economic collapse, war, famine, they can regress, falling back on these base instincts. It's like in The Walking Dead, right? After a few seasons, the zombies aren't the real problem anymore. The real threat is the other humans who've regressed to protecting their own tiny tribe, no matter the cost. Now, this us versus them instinct, it doesn't just stop with individuals. We scale it up. We project it onto entire cultures and civilizations. And we create this illusion of a hierarchy, this ladder of superiority that isn't actually there. I mean, think about it. We throw around words like advanced civilization all the time, but what are we even measuring? Is it just about who has the most money, the biggest army, the fanciest technology? Or is there a better, more meaningful way to judge a society's success? You could measure a civilization by its material output, right? How much stuff it produces and consumes. By that metric, yeah, modern America might seem superior. But what if the real measure of a civilization is its adaptiveness, its ability to evolve, to solve its problems, to take care of its people without wrecking the planet? By that measure, a civilization built entirely on endless consumption might actually be one of the most primitive ones out there. Okay, let's bring all of this home to our world right now, because there's something specific about modern society that is pouring gasoline on the fire of this chimpanzee reflex. We're told constantly, from the time we're kids, be an individual, be self-sufficient, stand on your own 2 feet. But here's the thing, we're not designed for that. We are a deeply, profoundly social species. This forced individualism makes us feel fragile, insecure, and incomplete. And that, it turns out, makes us the perfect consumers. And you've got to understand, this isn't an accident. A system that needs us to constantly consume things benefits from making us feel alone and inadequate. Because when you feel that void, you'll always be buying something to try and fill it. It's like a deliberate murder of our social nature. And this connects directly back to racism and xenophobia. Just think about it for a second. If our system teaches you that it's okay to just cut ties with your own parents because they're toxic, how on earth is that system going to prepare you to accept a total stranger from a completely different culture? It's not. It's priming you for fear. So here's the bottom line. We all have this hardware inside us. The fear, the tribalism, that chimpanzee reflex, it's part of our wiring. But, and this is the most important part, we also have something more. We have a choice. You know, there's this amazing concept in Arabic that just nails this idea. The word for injustice, zulm, comes from the root word for darkness. And that's exactly what injustice is. It's the darkness that happens when we turn off our uniquely human capacity for reason. It's what happens when we let our animal instincts take over, without the light of conscious rational thought. And really, that's the final question this all leads to, isn't it? We have the hardware of an animal, but we have the software of a human being. And every single day we get to choose which program we're going to run. Are we going to use our higher capacity for reason, for empathy, for real justice? Or are we just going to let our most primitive fears turn us into little more than anxious chimpanzees clinging to our tribe in the dark? The choice always is ours.